Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsors at Eco Barista. The reason I sound like this is because they got massages at our stand at Mice, and so I'm getting a massage while recording this message for you. They're the best sponsor of the pod that we could have had. They have the best eco products. This probably sounds really pornographic, but it's not. I'm just getting a massage. They have the best eco-friendly coffee products. They got coffee bags that you can design yourself. They got cups. They got iced coffee cups. They got everything you need. So make sure to support them because they support us. Head to ecobarista.com.au and get 15% off your first purchase when you sign up. Oh, mama, that's good.
Welcome back to It's Just Coffee. Today we've got Ziv Shalev in, the man who invented the Wally and sold it to La Marzocco, then helped create Breville Beans and sold it to the world. So as usual, you've got me in the desk at the moment, you've got Liam behind the mic, but we've also got Ziv in. And so Rowan today is out because he's got something personal happening in his life, a very great personal thing happening in life. But as always, it's just coffee! So today, for any of those budding entrepreneurs out there that want to learn how to get a product off the ground or a software off the ground or see a gap in the market for anything, Ziv's going to walk us through his story and his journey to where he is now on both a hardware and a software front, which I think is going to be very valuable for anybody listening. So Ziv, tell us more about your journey. Tell us about your life and your passion for coffee. Where did that start and where's it going?
Firstly, before I start, I wanted to thank you guys for having me over. I love what you guys doing here, and it's great to see how you help the coffee industry. So, with that in mind, how did I start in coffee? Wow. Well, it's a crazy journey, right? Like I remember my aunt had a restaurant in Israel, and as a 14 years old, I just was drawn to the espresso machine. I can't explain it, right? As a kid. I saw this thing, I was like, wow, I think it must have been a Chimbali machine or something. And I'm like, I want to play with that, right? And over the years, obviously, I got into coffee. Since I'm 16, I was working in cafes, managing coffee shops. And really, that's where my romance with coffee started. In the meantime, I also studied mechanical engineering, and I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. And the last sort of piece of that puzzle is that my entrepreneurial sort of mindset, right? And when you put all of this together, I feel like there is a lot of opportunity in the coffee industry.
It's the perfect storm, really, what you've done in terms of reshaping the way people steam milk on a commercial scale and then also how changing consumer habits for coffee at home. It's mind-blowing what you've done. Any particular cafes you worked at in Melbourne or anything like that, or was it just cafes back in Israel?
No, so the crazy part is I moved here when I was 21, and back then I thought that I am the shit, meaning like I really knew coffee. Well, that's what I thought at least, right? And then I'm walking into Melbourne, that's 2009, 2010, right? To draw the picture a bit, this is when Proud Mary just opened up. 7 Seeds was all the rage, right? It was a great...
The golden era.
The golden era, right? The heyday of specialty coffee in Melbourne. And I remember stumbling upon Brother Babu Budan, and I'm looking at the barista and I'm like, what is this guy doing? It's the first time, I remember that vividly, a guy pouring a tulip, right? I never seen that before. And then I also see them doing like manual distribution. I don't know if you remember that weird era that before, like, and then there were the dosing tools and all of that era. So I'm like, what is going on here? And it's dawned on me that there is something here going on that I had no idea that taking place in the global coffee industry.
There's nothing better than that moment when you realize you know nothing again. It just bottoms out and you're like, great, I still have more in this.
It was absolutely so exciting. So with that in mind, I started to work in a few cafes around Malvern, Glen Iris area. I managed a specialty coffee shop called Thread. Back then, we used Padre coffee, and we designed our own blend to suit. I was very lucky to work with few ex-Proud Mary baristas that really taught me a lot of what I know today about coffee.
And then, forgive me if I'm wrong, but did you compete in a latte art competition at all?
Wow, you've done your research. I also, yes, I did. But, I found it really uncomfortable. I couldn't get over the shaky hands. I was lucky enough to come second in one of those latte art throwdowns, in one of those food shows. I can't even remember what it was, like Great Food Show or something like that. But that's where my career in competition started and ended. It was like, too much pressure.
All I'm hearing is that I think we should relive the glory days. I think we should get a latte art situation going on.
Oh,
Ziv and I, we've talked about this. We recently judged a latte art competition together, and we both said we could do better than a couple of the pours. And then our eyes locked, and the moment came like, we're going to have to do this, aren't we?
We're going to have to do that.
So speaking of latte art, what's most integral to latte art is good quality milk. So good quality milk is something that's always been, it's 80% of a beverage. It's a big part, or say 80% of a milk-based beverage in an Australian coffee. How did you design the Wally? Like, where did you see the pain points? What were you, like, were you just on bar one day, or were you at a cafe, you saw something going wrong?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like that was all taking place around 2010, 2011, right? So again, that was pre-pack press, pre-reverse osmosis, pre-precision baskets, right? Pre a lot of innovation that actually happened in the coffee industry nowadays, right? So I was a mechanical engineering student back then. I was working in coffee bars, and I was quite puzzled with the massive gap between what the manufacturers out of Italy were doing at the time, machine manufacturers like Marzocco, or even like back then, I think that, Slayer and Cinesso just came up, so even in the States, to really the knowledge and the workflow at the bar level, right? It was a great disconnect between the two. And I was standing there in the bar as a mechanical engineering student and as a coffee passionate, and I'm like, we can change it. We can improve significantly a lot of the workflows in a bar to make it more efficient and ultimately provide the barista the tools, the enhancements they need in order to concentrate about what matters the most, which is the extraction and which is the hospitality.
Yeah, amazing. And it's the birth of automation on a grander scale. And it did really inform a lot of the other designs that have followed from it. So how did you start? Like, where did you start? Were you in your garage? Where were you?
Yeah, so the process started with me looking around and saying, okay, I know how to froth milk, right? Well, and my hand moving in a certain way. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure that I can actually build a machine that replicates the motion of the barista's hand, right? And that's the journey that I undertook to create Wally. So as a young entrepreneur, cash-strapped, it was really fascinating journey, which is, first of all, hardware is really hard, right? It's really quickly becomes really expensive. And I knew that from the word go. So I was looking for the scrappiest way to prove this hypothesis. If I build a machine that imitates the motion of my hand, would it work, right? Would it work? So I thought, what will be the simplest way to do it? Well, I need a steam wand that can move up and down. I need somehow the jug to tilt, okay? And I went for the bare minimum, the minimum viable product that one can imagine, which means as scrappy as you can go. One milk quantity, one milk jug, one temperature, one texture, and one milk type, right? Only full cream. And I really wanted to see if it can work on those parameters. I believe that if I can make it work on that, I can then scale it to this grand vision of a system that makes any milk to any texture and any temperature in any jug, right? But the idea was to distill this idea to this really simple mindset. How can I be as scrappy as possible and create this little system? So, yeah.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing.
Was it little? Like your first prototype? Like I always think like, you always end up minimizing and making it smaller and smaller and smaller, but...
Yeah, so I think it was about, let's say about an A4, but just like a box in the size of an A4 sort of thing. And the idea was, let's not deal with anything complex, right? So the motion is complex alone. There is also the steam, right? You need
the water. You
need a tank of water. You need to heat the water to a steaming temperature, and that was really difficult to solve. So I said, no, I'm not going to solve it. I'm just going to connect it to a machine, to an external steam source that will be able to provide the steam for that. So then I could concentrate only on the motion. I was lucky enough as a mechanical engineer that I actually could draw a lot of the mechanical drawings myself and then use subcontractors to create those early on parts, mainly from plastic, right? But the big challenge was actually the electronics, right? So it's one thing to source the parts and understand, okay, I need a temperature probe, I need a motor that can drive, a linear motor to drive the vertical motion and another motor to drive the tilt. But it's another thing to connect it into a logic, right? So you need someone to actually design for you the PCB, the electronic board, and then the logic behind it that you can program. So
this is amazing. This is unbelievable. Yeah,
and that was quite.
So you first things first. You've gone and decided that the most integral part of your design is the motion, replicating the hand movement. You're using an existing machine as the armature. Is that correct? To produce the steam.
No,
But you did, or did you do those things separately? Like you added the steam secondary to the motion. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, two separate things.
Yep.
So I didn't want to create the steam. I just used steam from an existing espresso machine, and I concentrated only on the motion itself.
What machine did you use to start off with?
I used a Breville.
You used a Breville?
Yeah, I used a Breville. I'm a proud owner of a Breville dual boiler. I can actually touch base on it later in the show. But this is one of the reasons why I'm actually working at Breville is because in 2011, I purchased my first dual boiler machine when it just came to market. I was amazed with this machine.
Yeah.
We just added that to our arsenal in the kitchen.
Liam's a proud owner of a Breville dual boiler now as well.
It's a magnificent machine. So yeah, that was the...
So then let me get this straight. So how did you, what are the key design decisions then when it comes to actually steaming the milk? Did you have to change the steam tip at all, or did you have to change the wand shape at all?
Well, if we want to be really technical about it, for me, it was, again, how do I imitate to perfection my motion? Like, as in, if you know how to froth milk to perfection, you know exactly what you do. You know the steps that you take in order to stretch the milk and then to smooth out that milk, right? And you know how to do it for each milk quantity to whatever temperature you want. And I just followed that process to the T, which means I need a machine that can stretch the milk, right, to a certain height. I need a machine that can actually tilt at a certain point in time, and the tilt angle need to be certain that I'll get that circulation going. And those were the parameters. So I also need a means to measure that temperature, right, and understand what's happening in the process in the meantime. So it's called like mapping out the inputs and the outputs that the system need. And then I went and procured those parts, right? I just looked on Google for, where can I get, literally, can I get those, a temperature probe that is, can be submerged in a liquid, and where can I get a motor that is strong enough to tilt a kilo, because like I was imagining a jug full of milk, and so on and so forth. And then this is the kicker here, and that's the thing that I want to share with a lot of young entrepreneurs out there. Then there is the need to put it together. And that can be really costly. There is a lot of services out there, a lot of companies that are approaching young entrepreneurs with this solution mindset, right? Come to me and I'll help you bring your idea to life. But usually that comes with a significant cost, right? We're talking about at least 50 grand for like an early sort of like really small package, and north of 100, 200 grand to actually see material product that actually maybe can be marketed, right? As a starting point. So, but, they also say that constraints is the mother of all invention.
Agreed.
And being cash constrained, it's unbelievable what it drives you to do, right? So I found this young electrical engineer, and I subcontracted him to actually be able to design for me this PCB in a very cost-effective way, right? And we just found this path to work together, and it was a win for him and a win for me.
And did that impact manufacturing costs going forward as well, because you found the most innovative way to do it on that level or at that price point?
Well, to paint the picture fully, it's not as simple as that, right? I had a working prototype.
Okay.
Right? There is a big difference between a working prototype in the lab to mass production. It's like there is endless, it's a massive chasm.
Yeah, amazing. And then, so just to touch back on the $50,000 that someone would charge you, how much did you make it for in the end? The first prototype?
I would say that overall it was less than $10,000.
Whoa. Amazing.
Yeah.
Holy, wow, well done. And oh my God, that's left me shook a little bit. That saved you so much money.
So that comes down to relationships then, right? Like you're saying that the turning point was this relationship you had with the subcontractor that you already knew, right?
Oh, I actually didn't know him, but I was just looking for that right relationship with the right person. I think that relationships makes all the difference, and finding the right people to help you early on in the process, not just from a subcontractor's point of view, but also from an advice point of view, is so important for the success.
All right, so let's look at this now. We've got the prototype. It's ready. What were the next steps to get it to scale, or did you have to get someone to pre-invest in it, or did you look for someone to help you get it out to market?
So what was ensued was quite a crazy journey, right? So I have a working prototype. It's working really well. I use it every day at home, and again, as a professional barista, and I certified it myself, meaning it's really working well. Like, I'm really happy with the quality and the outcome. And, I'm like really excited, in fact, ecstatic about that progress, going to investors, trying to leverage my personal network, trying to raise capital. Failed, right? Like, it's unbelievable the amount of conversations of you going to one investor and they said, well, quantify for me the need to have that in a cafe. How much money is it going to save an average cafe over a year? Then you're going to another investor. Quantify for me the manufacturing costs and the liabilities that will be associated if there is a recall. Then you're going to another investor, and it's like, quantify for me this and that. And then you're going to do the work, and then it's like, nah, too complex, too risky, too this, too that. That was a journey that took more than a year, right? And I sort of put myself this time box, and I said, well, if I'm not successful by December, I'm going to put it in a box, put a really nice sticker on it, failed, take all those learnings and move to the next idea, sort of thing, right? And it's just amazing how the universe aligns sometimes, right? It's like, we are in November, I said, you know what? I should show it to someone. And I pick up the phone, calling this guy. He said, oh, I know the perfect person you should speak to, that connect me to the next person, that connect me to the next person. And the next thing I know is I'm on the phone to Kent Bakke.
No.
The legendary CEO of La Marzocco. And I'm like, just to explain, as a humble barista in Melbourne, this idea that I'm speaking to Kent Bakke on the phone was like an insane moment in time. Like,
he reshaped specialty coffee.
Right, as in, like, I idolized him and everything he represent and what he built. And all of a sudden, I'm speaking on the phone to him. And the next thing I know is that in December, like a month later, I'm flying to Florence to meet with him. And I'm like, this is insane, right? So now I'm in Florence. We're going out for dinner, me and Kent, one-on-one. And I'm like, pinch me. This is not real. As in, this is my idol. I'm just sitting across the table for him, and we're talking everything coffee culture, innovation. And I just couldn't believe it. It must have been one of the proudest moments in my career to that point. Absolutely.
I would still rate it as a great moment in your life. That's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
That validation and where you were at. So where did that conversation go, and where did it lead to?
So then the next day, so I brought with me the prototype, which was really stressful to fly it in a massive Pelican case, and I wasn't sure if it's gonna work or not. Right, really stressful, but it's made it just fine to the factory. Went to Scarpira with Kent, met Guido and the rest of the R&D team, and in the lab connected it to one of the La Marzocco machines, and that's when the crazy part just happened. That's when it hit me. They looked at me, and I did not need to pitch it anymore, right? You can imagine after a year that I was pitching it to people. And no, but if that, there was no pitch needed. They looked at it and say, we understand, right? We understand that this is not a gimmick. We understand that you giving here the baristas the tools they need to concentrate on what matters most, which is the extraction, which is hospitality, which is the time with the customer, right? They understood it straight away. And it was like,
I got goosebumps listening to that.
Same.
Man, I feel like you're painting that picture of just like you're gearing yourself up to have that, like, to pitch something that you've done so many times, and then them just, that silence, and you're like, oh, yeah, That's right there.
No, we're on the same page.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
We all see the same problem. We all see the same solution, and we all have the barista's best interest at heart. Amazing.
Wow.
And then so from there, you've got it. You're in Scarperia. You're at the big facility. You're there with the heads of state, essentially, or the heads of the research department. And do you have a name for it yet?
No, it actually was called an automatic milk frother.
Just an automatic milk frother. All right, cool. So what were the next steps from there? Now they've seen it. They've given it the seal of approval.
Well, yeah, then we ensued on this journey of how to actually bring it to market together, right? And so that's a really interesting journey on its own, which is there is few ways as a young entrepreneur to bring a product to market, right? And I think that many people misunderstanding that the very fact that building a product is not building a company, right? It's two very different things. Yet, because hardware is so capital heavy and it's almost like a black hole, it's actually blinds you from everything else that you need to do in order to set up a business. Because you don't just need to create the product, you actually need to also set up the business. And that can be a really challenging journey. I was lucky enough in my early on career that like La Marzocco actually came and say, we would license this technology from you. And, you know, that's on its own. We can talk about it for hours and hours. It's a very different approach to product development, to commercialization. It's a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and it really depends on your personality and what you're willing to give and what you're willing to get in return. And I'll just touch really briefly on that, but many innovators and entrepreneurs falling in love with their idea, right? And if you fall in love with your idea or with your solution too much, it's very hard to let go. You cannot license your technology to any other manufacturer out there without the ability to let go. And it's a really profound step that some people can take forward and some can simply not. I was lucky enough that it didn't bother me as much. I saw that as just another step forward in my journey. And I was happy to bring it to a certain point. And I knew that then I'll have to let it go. And for them to make the decisions with the best interest for it to see the day of light. For me, it was more important than actually protecting my idea so much, falling in love with it so much, obsessed with every detail, but then not see it come to life.
That's amazing. And so is that part of your upbringing, or what was it? Is it your studies? Was it your journey that led you to that point that you're like, I can let go of this thing? Because you've had that moment with KB, you've then had that moment in Scarperia, you're sharing this thing and you know it's bigger than you. Is that why? Or
yeah, I think that it's such an interesting question. I haven't thought about it enough, to be honest. But I think that if I look back at it, I had this drive to be a successful entrepreneur, right? As in, and I saw that standing above everything else that I believed at the time. And that's meaning that if that's become a success story, right? And even though I will have to give away the control, and maybe it won't match my vision 1-to-1, right? But as long as it makes it to market, I will have my success story attached to it. I don't know. It's just a guiding principle. It seems pretty simple when I say it out loud, but yeah, I just think that that's what guided me forward, really.
That's amazing. And how do you feel about it now that it's been in the market for quite a few years? It's a well-established product. We saw it on the bench at MICE at quite a few of the stands. Are you happy with where it is?
Look, I couldn't be prouder. I couldn't be prouder, and to see that in cafes around the world. I think I consider myself very lucky, not just with the initial story with Kent and Guido. I consider myself really lucky to be able to work with so many talented people at La Marzocco to bring it to market, right? As I said, there is a chasm between a little early stage prototype to an industrialized product that can be sold at scale, manufactured and sold at scale. And it's thanks to them and all the talented people there that did the hard work to bring it to market. For me, just pride and joy to see it today in every cafe, right? As simple as that.
And is there any sort of legacy agreement with it where you have to keep coming back for any sort of new innovations to it or any sort of upgrades?
I rather not to disclose any.
That's fair enough. That's totally fair enough. I can understand that. So let's just rewind and just not rewind, but recap on what we've just learnt there. That's probably one of the best specialty coffee stories I've heard in a very long time, if not ever. That's unbelievable, Ziv. How can we use your learnings to help people now if they're in that position where they're on bar and they're sitting there going, well, that's really inefficient or that's missing or there's so many different holes that could make workflow easier and better. What would you say to that aspiring either product designer or a barista that's got a mechanical-minded approach to things?
Wow, so much to say. I think I'll try to.
Yeah.
No, I would like to try. I would like to try and break it down into 3 main pieces of advice, right? The first one is about the problem that you are solving. As I said, many entrepreneurs are obsessed with their idea, with their solution. I would highly recommend to actually obsess with the problem, right? You need to make sure that you are solving the right problem. It doesn't matter how you solve it yet. First of all, you need to make sure that you solve the right problem. And to do that, if you think that you do have an idea and it does solve a problem, go and speak with all the experts in the field to actually understand that it's a true problem for them, not just for you, right? So go and speak to every barista in every cafe and validate that you are solving a real problem. Go and speak to coffee roasters. Go and speak to customers. Go and speak to those people that you meant to solve the problem for, right? Obsess with solving the problem. Don't obsess with your idea and your solution. It's really important. Many people do it too often, is they building a product that actually creates a new problem, right? Instead of solving an existing problem in the marketplace. So I would definitely urge everyone to actually deploy that mindset when it comes to product development. What is the problem that you are solving? How big is it for how many people, right? And if you really have those answers down packed, I think you really have an opportunity to build a great product.
That's an amazing point of view. And I think that's shared by quite a few of the world's best product designers. Philippe Struck, for instance, he's one of the famous French industrial designer. That's one of his main key motivators. Always look for the problem. Don't worry about the solution yet. Make sure the problem's validated across the board and make sure everybody that sees the problem like you're with those people and means test it and get it to the next step. And then what was your next point of view?
So the next piece of advice is actually a really challenging one, and that is in hardware, you really require to protect your IP, right? Yet, while you are required to protect your IP, it is really important, as I mentioned in the first step, which is to test your hypotheses. So you need to really find the balance of finding the path to speak to as many people as possible and really validate your idea, yet to protect this IP. And many people find that step to be really isolating, right? And there is, then you draw the natural conclusion of, no, I can't speak to anyone about it. I'd rather be on my own in the lab, showing it only to my best mates and hope for the best. And that's the really wrong conclusion to draw here. Right? There is a path forward at which you can actually more safely disclose some key elements of your IP without to risk it, yet to get all the advice and feedback that you need from professionals in the industry to make sure that what you build is the right thing for them.
That's a hard balance, isn't it?
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard, and I don't pretend to have the solution here.
How did you approach that?
One of the path to go around it is once you validated your idea, you spoke to the experts in the industry, you can actually register a pending patent application. What it does give you, it gives you an early rights in the queue. What does that mean is, let's say that I have an idea to create this glass, right? And I show that glass to Sonam. And Sonam here say, that's a great idea. I'm going to go and register a patent on this glass, right? So then if I actually registered a pending patent on that, and Sonam comes with the same idea as me, right? I just have the right in the queue. Meaning, if I was there before Sonem, right, I can actually claim that spot and say, no, it was me first.
Is there is that time sensitive? Do you have 6 months or?
Usually it's up to a year.
Up to a year, yeah. Cool.
Again, I think that if you are at this phase, you should seek a lot of legal advice on all of those things. It's not an easy path.
No.
Is that expensive?
Anything to do with patents and IP rights is generally really expensive. As I said, the pending patent application is the least expensive path, but yes, it can still be costly.
Cool. And then what was the third point that you wanted to touch on to help entrepreneurs?
The third point was all about patience. And that is, if you really believe in yourself to start today in 2025 a hardware business, you need to be really patient. You need to be in it for the long haul. It's a long and slow process, and it can be capital heavy unless you bring yourself the expertise to shave some of the costs and doing the work yourself. And those processes take very long time, right? So there is no quick success when it comes to hardware. And with that in mind, I would like to urge you all to think about other alternate ways that you can bring your product to market. As I said, you can build a company around your product. You can create a joint venture with another manufacturer to bring it to market in a more efficient way, or you can license your technology. And I think that you owe to look in all those different pathways and make the right decision.
Amazing. Unfortunately, I wish we could have just spent a whole hour on Wally, but Ziv, you are so talented and there's so much more to give. And you actually pivoted recently, or not so recently, into software, into Breville Beans. So how did that start? Did you see a problem? Is that what we're going to go with here? We're going to go through your 3 main steps?
Interesting. Yeah. So as I said, I was so lucky with my journey. Lucky to work with so many talented people. Yet the conclusion was the same, which is hardware is bloody hard. It's bloody hard. And I finished to work on Wally, and it was abundantly clear to me that I want to do something different. I want to do it at scale, potentially a global scale. And I really want to make sure that I'm building something that connecting people, an ecosystem, right? I sort of had this vision in my mind, and I was looking at different ways to achieve it. And naturally, at scale and to connect people, you really need to move into the software as a business or as a service, if you like, right? And the first conclusion that I had in mind was, okay, I know coffee, I know the coffee industry. Why wouldn't I build a marketplace that connects between the best coffee roasters to the best cafes in Australia and then in the world, right? And very quickly, it's turned out that it's not going to work, right? And that's part of this early validation that I was speaking about before. Go and speak to experts. Go and fail fast, right? And the crazy part is that I spoke with roasters about it, and they had no interest in such system to work, because it's really, if it would have worked at scale, you are disrupting all the relationships that the coffee industry is built upon, right? And in the same time, I met Jim Clayton, which is the CEO of Breville. And Jim, as the CEO of Breville, saw a very different problem that he needed to solve, which is Breville sell a lot of coffee machines to consumers, right? But those consumers don't have access to freshly roasted coffee. So he pitched it to me that, instead of connecting between the coffee roasters and coffee shops, come and connect the Breville customers to the best roasters in the world, right? So build this ecosystem between Breville, the coffee roasters, and consumers. And I immediately said yes.
Amazing. And what sort of discussion process was that? Was that relatively quick? Was it a pitch process, or was it just he managed to catch wind of what you were doing?
No, it was a pretty relaxed conversation. It wasn't a pitch. It was just like, sort of like bouncing off ideas. And really, at the end of that, Jim offered me to join Breville and do it within Breville.
It's amazing. Can you imagine that? Just like, what does your contact list look like? He's just gone from the head of states at the head of state at LM into their head at the top of Breville. That's unbelievable.
I mean, if we're jumping back, like that whole your concept of having like an ecosystem and a community of like connection, that was already preconceived, right? Before this conversation with the heads of Breville, right? Like you had this idea to pivot that way, and then they approach you and you're like, wait a second, I've already kind of wanted to fulfill that.
Not quite. So as I said, like I saw an opportunity to build an ecosystem between coffee shops and coffee roasters. Jim saw a very different problem statement and an opportunity to connect between Breville to the coffee roasters to the consumers, right? And as I said, I was interested in building this ecosystem, moving from hardware business to a software business, and it just slotted right in. I just saw the opportunity in front of me and said, I gotta take it.
So just so our listeners can understand, what is Beans? Where is it at now? What are your goals for it? And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that and what your role is.
Right. So Beans.com is a platform that connects the Breville customers to the best coffee roasters in the world, right? We offer a very simple service. It doesn't matter if you're a novice or an expert. It doesn't matter what flavor preference you've got, roast profile, price point, or where you live. You get access to the best coffee for you. We don't mark up this coffee, right? All our coffees on the platform are roaster direct prices, and all the coffees are roasted to order, right? So when a customer places an order on Beans.com, we ping it to the roaster. The roaster then roasts the coffee and shipped to the customer door, right? So in essence, it's a platform that provides convenience and access to the best coffee in the world from the best roasters in the world in a very easy, frictionless way.
And so I imagine the development of that software was quite difficult.
Yes. It was a fascinating journey on its own. First of all, you have the journey from an entrepreneur to an intrapreneur. Again, we can talk about it for a few hours just on that topic.
We're getting you back, don't worry.
which is a very interesting journey on its own. But if you think about the problem statement of what we try to solve, we needed to build a really robust fulfillment engine, right? We need to track live where the orders are, when roasters are roasting their coffee, how it's getting delivered to our customers, how long it takes to get delivered, and so on and so forth. So it was an interesting process. But again, we took it with the mentality of fail fast, which means that before we build anything, we're going to validate it with the coffee roasters themselves. We had this idea that is, in fact, it's not an idea, it's a guiding principle, which is we want to be the roaster's best partner. And to do that, we need to build systems that works for them.
You need to fit into their systems almost as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where's Beans at now then?
Yeah, so today Beans is live in 4 countries. We are live in the US, in the UK, in Germany, and in Australia. We have 150 roaster partners, again, the best of the best roasters in the world. And just to give you a bit of an idea about our scale, we have shipped to date about 1.5 million coffee bags to more than 150,000 households, right? So,
crazy numbers.
Yeah,
the software works.
So the software works, and we're definitely starting to see some scale coming through.
I was actually going to ask, just before this, the development of how that works, and you put the roasters first. All of those roasters would use a different system, right? So, how did you flex the development to work across, to have such connect so many different roasters with different systems into one platform,
Oh, it's a fascinating journey. It really is. So, one of our biggest challenges was to launch Beans in the first place. And in a platform play as such, you've got the supply side to be solved and the demand side to be solved, right? And we recognize the importance of our coffee roasters to be the heart of the coffee industry, the influencers, the trendsetters, right? And as such, we needed it to work for them. Part of the main challenge that we had when we started in the US, right? And we started mainly for a tactical reason. It wasn't a strategic reason as such. And they were very cynical when we came to their conversations. And the reason is that because they've been burnt out by other traditional marketplaces of coffee beans, right? So a traditional marketplace of like roasted coffee is a very different play to what we do, right? If you think about any marketplace, the idea is that you need to disintermediate the roaster from the customer, right? You becoming the brand itself. And you compete on cost of customer acquisition, right? This is the play of a traditional marketplace. A lot of those roasters early on were bent by this mentality and by the margin-hungry sort of business model that attached to it, right? It's not very economical to ship roasted coffee, right? Especially if you subsidize the shipping component. So we needed to prove to those roasters that we really mean it, that we are different, that we are building a platform, that we're building an ecosystem, right? And part of it was to prove to them that by the means of integration to their systems, right, we want to be your frictionless partner. We really want to show you. We're going to walk the walk to actually integrate with you in such ways that you can do what you do best, which is ship coffee to customers, right? And we really build a system around it. The second part of that was to really nurture this relationship and make sure that it works for them, right? As I said, we take no margin when we sell it to the customers. We look at coffee service, the coffee service we provide, as the ultimate solution for the Breville customer, right? And we believe that if we do it right, if we provide this service to the customers, more customers will appreciate specialty coffee and more customers will consume specialty coffee at home, which will grow the specialty coffee industry as a whole. Right?
Amazing. Yeah, it'll definitely grow the pie, especially like when you think about where a customer journey is from a Breville perspective. You know, you might be entry level, you might be that pro barista, you know, you're not quite at that prosumer level yet, but it's a great introduction to quality coffee and to quality coffee across different roasteries, different blends. And then let's just look at it from a roaster's point of view. Like what would you say to most roasters that are looking to get on beans or were hoping to get on beans?
The way we look at roaster partnerships is very different to any traditional marketplace. And that is, we really looking for partners, right? And if you join Beans, we look at it like another child, another mouth to feed, if you like, right? So we are really taking the time in order to find the right fit in those partnerships and to add the right roasters at the right time. I believe that these relationships that we're building with coffee roasters, it's all about relevancy. And when we onboard you to our platform, we want it to be meaningful for you. We want to be able to help you grow. So we would love to speak to as many coffee roasters as possible about being onboarded to Beans. Just note that it may take time until the right time comes for you to join.
Yeah, understand. And you can also see I've looked at the Beans website quite a fair bit in my time, and the relationship goes both ways, where you see someone like a St. Ali, they also stock your machines. And so there's a relationship there where it goes both ways.
Absolutely. It's all part of this growth mentality, right? And partnership is you can, by joining this ecosystem, we really believe we give you all the levers you need to succeed.
Cool. So what's next for Beans?
Well, really interesting. So I think that to understand for a second, if I may take a step back, because I think it's really important to understand why Beans exists in the first place, right? Yep. And then we can understand where we're heading with it, right? But as in, if you look at Breville historically, we have pineapple. If you look at Breville historically, right, we have cracked the formula to build the best espresso machines at a price point.
Agreed.
Right? As in, we were lucky enough that our engineers were based in Australia. They understood what specialty coffee is way before the rest of the pack did. They identified those 4 key elements that any coffee machine need in order to reproduce commercial machine grade at a lower price point, right? Which is you need the right pressure, right? 9 bars. You need the right temperature, 93 degrees consistently. You need the right dose, which is like at least your portafilter need to fit between 18 to 20 grams of coffee. And you need enough steam power or temperature in order to create microfoam, right? And it sounds like for most of the audience here, it will be a pretty mundane sort of list, right? But you'll be amazed that most machines at that price point don't adhere to this very simple.
They can't.
They can't, right?
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough that our engineers understood it very early on in the process. So every single machine in the Breville range adhere to this, what we call 4 key formula, right? So then our really clever marketing people came and they wrapped it with really beautiful messages like barista made specialty coffee at home or third wave specialty coffee at home. And that is really resonating with customers in the aisles of Williams Sonoma or Harvey Norman or wherever you shop. Right? But here is the problem. Right? Most of those customers that buy a Breville machine, they are new entrants to the field of specialty coffee. Right? They had an espresso machine at home, most likely, and they said, this tastes different to the cafe. Why? Right? I know why. It's because I need to get serious about making coffee at home. Right? And the conclusion is I need a Breville. So most of those customers are new entrants to the field of specialty coffee at home. And historically, that was a big problem for us because we can all imagine that if you know nothing about specialty coffee and coffee making in general, and you unbox a beautiful new Breville machine, what is the knowledge curve that you need to climb, right?
Huge,
what is that? How does that look like? I've heard someone told me that fresh is best. Someone told me that there is a thing called specialty coffee beans. Where do I get it from? What's the right flavor for me? Are those special beans? You can imagine like that question is like, what the hell am I going to put in this?
Another world.
It's another world, right?
Rabbit hole.
And imagine that back in the day, we used to give you this machine and give you an instruction booklet and said, go figure it out, right?
And you're still buying coffee from the supermarket and you're expecting a cafe quality product. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Most of the customers drew one conclusion, which is, I know nothing about it, but I know where I buy my groceries, which is a supermarket, so I will buy coffee beans. Yeah, absolutely. Which, generally speaking, it came a long way, right, in the last few years, like the range in the supermarket. But still, it has nothing to do, like the supply chain of the supermarket, which is based on pallets, cannot support freshness,
no.
right? It's just not a thing. A lot of coffees on the shelf are like 6 months old plus. And we all know that if we're trying to dial in a 6 months old coffee, sometimes it's so dry that there is no way to get the back pressure, right? So that first experience at home is so suboptimal. And that's where we were 6 years ago, right? Now, the fascinating thing about coffee is that, if you will cook a bad steak on the barbecue, you will never blame the barbecue.
True, you won't.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, right? But when you make a bad coffee on the coffee machine, for some reason you always blame the espresso machine. It's unbelievable. Seriously, it's like the espresso machine. You wouldn't even go to the beans, like generally speaking. That's most of our customers, right?
It's true.
So true, yeah.
So that was the problem that we had a few years ago. And we put ourselves on the trajectory to solve that by answering that very question, right? By
Supplying the ingredients.
supplying the ingredients and overcoming the friction that you need, right? The friction in where do I get it from? Should I drive to the cafe? Should I drive to the roastery door to get my beans, right? While also providing customers the knowledge they need, because there is a big knowledge gap.
Huge, immense, yeah.
Yeah. So
Education and skill,
Yeah, and you are addressing that with your dial-in videos on your websites for different blends as well that are tailor-made for all the machines. So you are taking positive steps to help address those situations as well, where people may even need that little bit of extra help.
absolutely. We found that, I believe that we have amazing brands of coffee in in the coffee industry, right? And people done phenomenal job in building those coffee brands from the ground up. And it's true around the world. Like there are phenomenal coffee brands out there. Yet I feel a lot of us are caught in the same rabbit hole, which is we assume that the customer knows so much more than what they know. And that's create a bit of an echo chamber effect, which is we scream and shout a lot of stuff that the ordinary person won't ever understand.
Zero.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is the challenge that we have at Breville, which is take all this knowledge and make it so simple for the customer to consume, to understand, to relate, and then to consume.
I think that's physically manifested in the latest Oracle Jet. I think what that's managed to do is keep that specialty mindset and the barista mindset, but also make it super automatic and yield a great product. I think it's being addressed across all fronts by Breville, which I really, really highly recommend.
Yeah, and I think that that's the exciting part of the journey, which is we have the product stream that taking all the necessary steps to make this process easier for those consumers, right? And really flatten this curve that you need in order to make great coffee at home, while also pairing them with the right coffee beans for the right, for their first use and ongoing use at home.
Yeah.
And the combination between those two is really magical.
Yeah, and that's a logistical feat in itself as well.
Absolutely.
So you've told us what's happened. You've told us why. You told us who. What's next?
What's next? Well,
what's next for both Beans and Ziv? Because I feel like Ziv's story is far from over.
No, I appreciate it. But to be honest, at the moment, Ziv is Beans.
Yep.
And for the foreseeable future...
So the Z in Beans is actually for Ziv.
I'll leave it as speculation only. But no, I believe that there is so much more to do with beans at the moment, right? And I'm really excited about the future of beans. As you can appreciate, Breville is sold in many countries and beans is only at 4 countries at the moment. So you can draw your own conclusions about that statement. I think that we have a long way to go in order to optimize the customer experience and to make this seamless experience for coffee novices and experts alike. I think that as you touched on, the dial-in videos is a great initiative that we're playing with, which is it's never been done before, right? Now that we ship a machine to a customer and we ship them a bag of beans, we actually know for the first time what machine they have and what beans they're going to consume, right? So what we try to do is to build content which is purposely made for that initial interaction. So this is an example of the length that we're going down to actually ensure that our customers have a great experience at home. So I really see a future that is more personalized, that we sort of understand what you need before you understand it, right? And we really make it that simple for you to enjoy that first experience and ongoing experience.
Amazing. And then I suppose we speak a lot about it here in terms of how much the home barista piece is affecting the cafe piece and stuff like that. How much do you reckon beans and people now consuming cafe quality coffee, both the coffee and also the brew itself because of the high quality machines that you have, how much is that affecting cafe culture?
That's a fascinating question, right? I think that there is few ways to slice that one. Obviously, as I said before, Nespresso really started that craze, that sort of George Clooney telling you that like it's really cool to have an espresso machine at home, right? The amazing thing about it is that they made espresso at home available to the masses, right? They took away all the barriers for entry. And then, as I mentioned before, people started to ask themselves, well, why doesn't it taste as good as the cafe, right? And then COVID hit. And then everyone started to buy brewing gear at home because we didn't know what's the pandemic have to hold. Right, but I think that trend is set, which is more customers now taking ownership of their daily brew, right? And when you take ownership, it's like building an IKEA furniture, right? There's something, it's not, I can buy a sofa or a table or I can assemble it, but there is a level of satisfaction that I get when I make it myself. I take ownership of it, so I'm actually partaking in the learning. I'm actually partaking in actively engaging with this community. And I feel that that's the fascinating bit that's taking place in the industry now, that historically it was bi-directional. There is roasters, there is some high-profile baristas, there is obviously barista competitions, and Brewers Cup competitions, and they set the trends, and that it's flowing to the customers, right, to consumers at homes. I feel now that like it's becoming more prevalent to make exquisite coffee at home. It's actually starting to be bi-directional. Right? There is more people brewing coffee at home, more people actually asking the questions, and then the industry need to answer by creating those new trends. I feel that it's really emerging in front of our eyes, and I'm really fascinating by it.
Amazing. And you're taking a big part in that role, I guess.
Okay. Sure.
You're so humble, Ziv. It's amazing. I think we're going to wrap it up there. I really think we need to probably get you back on for both parts of those. I think maybe we try and dissect exactly how you got Wally out there. And I think also with the beans, we'd love to touch on it again in a year's time, see where it's at. You're only in 4 countries. Love to see it in 20. I think Middle East is almost perfect for you. There's so many different options, all through Southeast Asia, Japan, South Korea. I can imagine you there as well. What do you got? You can't say anything, can you? I love it when I put people
watch
people under the microscope like this. It's amazing. But you know what? I'd just love to say thank you so much, Ziv, for coming on. Your stories, not only have they inspired me, but I'm sure they've inspired anyone that's listening. I kind of want to make a prototype of something.
Actually, I kind of want to pitch to you an idea I've already got.
Yeah, and I think also your transparency from what you can give as well. I really appreciate that, and I think the industry is definitely a richer place for having you in it. And you're only just scratching the surface. So thanks so much for coming on, mate. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Sonam. Thank you for all the kind words.
And guys, if you want to contact us, please email us at hello@itsjustcoffeepod.com. This episode is brought to you by EcoBarista, one of our amazing partners. They give us all the beautiful, you can see our merch from Mice. They've designed us this amazing little coffee canisters. Then they do custom bags that Golden Brown uses and all of our friends all over. And then number 2, we have Apex Lab, who is the seasoning for your coffee and seasoning for your water. It's everything in your coffee.
And Simon just recently came second in the New South Wales Brewers Comp, so look out for him at Nationals, obviously repping the Apex.
Repping the Apex. Anyway, thank you so much. And Ziv, thank you again. I want to say thank you as well. Inspired. I love this story, and I can't wait to dive deeper.
I cannot wait to get a shortcut of that barbecue take. That is so spot on.
Thank you, guys.
You could not be any more spot on about that claim. Everyone blames the machine. Yeah, you never blame the barbecue, do you?
It's like...
Amazing.
I usually blame the butcher.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, true that.